Hi, I'm Hai, and I'm going to talk about the structure of the apologies arising from the Me Too movement. First, I would like to give an overview of the Me Too movement in 2017. So, at the beginning of 2017, the New York Times published an article describing decades of sexual harassment towards female co-workers by the influential film producer Harvey Weinstein. Following this event, actress Alyssa Milano used Twitter asking people to come forward if they had been sexually assaulted. And so thousands of people shared their stories of being sexually abused on various social media platforms. And just 1 year after her tweet, on Twitter only, more than 19 million tweets concerning the stories related to the Me Too movement was reported in various languages. In the US alone, more than 200 high-profile men and women in various industries have been accused of sexual misconduct. Some of them made public apologies, but these apologies was received negatively because they are seen as acts of saving faces, and they are considered to be slippery, sleazy, dishonest, gaslighting, and really totally void of accountability. Moving on, I'd like to talk about the rationale of the studies. So public apologies addressing sexual misconduct have an essential role in attaining moral integrity from the general public. So they help the sexual offenders redeem their reputation to a certain extent and sustain support from the public. And so it is worthwhile to study the linguistic properties of apologies addressing sexual misconduct. And since the apologies was delivered after accusation was made against the perpetrators in the heat of the Me Too movement, it's worth investigating the relationship between these apologies and the goals of the Me Too movement. So now I'd like to talk a bit about previous studies concerning apologies. First is from the perspective of pragmatics. So an apology is a speech act addressed to be faith needs and intended to remedy an offense for which a takes responsibility and thus to restore equilibrium between A and B. And in order for the utterances in a certain speech act to be successful, certain conditions must be met, which are the felicity condition. There are 4 felicity conditions of the speech act of apologizing listed here, and I will go back and discuss them further in my finding section. And since the apologies arising from the Me Too movement are received negatively, the apologies must have failed to meet the felicity condition of apologizing, and the analysis of the apologies will be discussed with the felicity condition of apologizing to elucidate why they have failed. And now I'd like to talk a bit about the apology and non-apology strategies. So Holmes has defined 4 broad categories of apology, and they will be discussed later in my findings. Holmes went a bit further and described a non-apology as an apology in which the speaker tries to minimize the responsibility. He also reported 4 non-apology strategy and their corresponding sub-strategy, and they will also be discussed later in my study. Now, I would like to talk about discourse studies related to the Me Too movement. The first study is conducted by Dear King. She aimed to evaluate the power dynamic brought about by the discourse in public apologies arising from the Me Too movement. She used critical discourse analysis framework and thematic analysis to investigate the reaction on Twitter towards those apologies. All of the chosen apologies included language consolidating rape culture, but the reaction towards each apology was different. In another study by Alexander, she utilized methods in corporate linguistics and did qualitative text analysis to identify the main themes and emotion in more than 200 public statements, including apologies made by people accused of sexual misconduct in the workplace in the Me Too movement. Apologies account for 1/3 of the statement examined, and the main themes from the apology was defense, denial, anger, and intense emotion. So various methods from the fields of pragmatics and discourse study have been employed to study apology, but no study so far has investigated the structure of apologies as a genre in terms of the compulsory and optional elements, as well as how each element can be realized. In the studies, apologies arising from the Me Too movement will be investigated, and the compulsory and optional elements and the semantic resources used to form those elements will be identified. Since these apologies was delivered at the heat of the Me Too movement, the relationship between these apologies and the goals of the Me Too movement will be explored. So I have 4 research questions as follows. What are the obligatory and optional elements in these apologies arising from the Me Too movement? How is each element in those apologies realized in terms of the semantic resources? How does each apologizer utilize those elements in his respective apology? And how do these apologies meet the goal of the Me Too movement? Now, I'd like to move to the third major part, which is my methodology. And so based on Vox newspaper lists, more than 200 Americans in different industries was accused of sexual misconduct, and more than 100 of them was in the entertainment industry. Due to the time constraint of my studies, I will focus on the apologies made by the people in the entertainment industry because they were the first ones to be accused of sexual misconduct in the Me Too movement, and they made a lot of public headlines due to their sexual misconduct. And so based on the name provided by Vox newspaper, I devised a code to search for the apology on Google as follows: the name of the perpetrator, such as Harvey Weinstein, Me Too, and apologies. And Google gave me the most popular apologizer, who are Harvey Weinstein, Ben Affleck, Louis C.K., Kevin Spacey, Justin Hoffman, and Chris Savino. So their apologies received at least 50,000 search results on Google. These six men all put their apologies on public platform for the general public to easily access. And the length of the apologies differ widely from just 10 words to almost 500 words. This signifies that there will be linguistic similarities and differences among these apologies. My analytical framework is Hassan Generic Structure Potential, which is a statement of the structural resources available within a given genre. The GSP is also descriptive of the total range of textual structure available within a genre. Hence, the GSP is composed of the obligatory, optional, and possible iterative elements to form a sequence of a particular genre. So because the aim of my study is to identify the obligatory and optional elements in the apologies and how those elements are sequenced. And so they align with the purpose of the GSP analysis, and that's why the GSP is a suitable analytical framework for my study. However, the GSP is a statement about the generic structure of a genre that requires an analysis of a large corpus, but the corpus in the study is small. So the result of this study will just be called the structure of the apologies arising from the Me Too movement. There are 3 steps in my analysis. So step 1 and step 2 was conducted simultaneously, in which apologies was read carefully to identify the compulsory and optional elements as well as the sequence of those elements. Semantic resources used to outline each element was identified as well. And the label used to name each element was based on Holmes' apology strategy and Kampf non-apology strategies. The final step is about the identified elements was compared to argument felicity condition of apologizing to determine if the Me Too apologies are successful, and to the goals of the Me Too movement to confirm if they meet those goals. And now I'd like to talk about my findings. So there is just one compulsory element, which is the code of apology, appearing in all chosen apologies. It signifies the fact that the text is an apology rather than a general statement talking about a past wrongful action. It can be expressed directly, such as sorry for, or indirect expressions such as regret what happened. And there are 12 optional elements, in which 7 elements appear repeatedly in some apologies. The first of them is the admission of offense. It is used to confirm that the apologizer harassed one or some women in the past. It can be expressed directly, such as act inappropriately, or it can be expressed indirectly, as in the Chris Savino apology, put her in an uncomfortable situation. And the second optional element is the apologizer character, in which is used to declare that the offender respects women and the person or people accusing them of their sexual misconduct. It is also used to create the image that their sexual harassing acts only happen once, and on the whole, they are people with good morale. And this element is often realized with the word respect. The third optional element is the apologizer feelings. It is used with adjective describing negative emotion to talk about the feelings, talk about the offender's feelings toward a sexual harassing act and their impact on the victims. And this element is used to evoke the feeling that the apologizer cares about the state of the victim, thereby gathering the empathy of the audience towards both the survivors and the apologizer, since the latter group has begun to understand how terrible their acts are. The fourth optional element is the apologizer reflection. It is used to convey the offender thoughts concerning their sexual harassing acts and how they plan to conduct their life in the future. So, for example, Louis C.K. stated that he learned from them and ran from them to describe his degree of understanding of his wrongful action. The fifth element is the apologizer commitment. It is used to list the offender's action to fix their mistakes of sexually harassing colleagues in the past. So Chris Savino said that he wants to uplift and cultivate a culture of respect. Or Harvey Weinstein lists many actions, and some of them are totally unrelated to his sexual harassing act. The sixth optional element is the justification of the offense, to give the reason why their sexual misconduct was legitimate. So Harvey Weinstein talked about the cultures in the 60s and 70s, and Louis C.K. talked about his power over his victim. And lastly, it is about the apologizer's sign-off, which is as in the apologizer ends the apology with their full name. And there are some optional elements that happens only once. For example, I will talk about the denial of offense made by Kevin Spacey, in which he stated that he did not commit any sexual misconduct. There is also the elements of apologizer unrelated stories, or the apologizer recounted the victim's feelings, and the apologizer assertion of authority. And finally, it is the apologizer appreciation for the reader's attention. And in relation with the felicity condition, concerning the preparatory condition, 5 apologizers have the element of admission of the offense, which is used to confirm that the apologizer committed sexual harassing acts. So it is considered a successful apology with this condition. For the sincerity condition, the quote apology element partially meets this condition. However, only Harvey Weinstein and Louis C.K. can be considered to fully meet the sincerity condition because they explicitly refer to a wrongful act they commit. For the proportional content condition, the admission of the offense occurring in 5 apologies satisfied the part of confessing about the sexual misconduct, but only Louis C.K. apology meets the full requirements of this condition because he points out exactly what he did to the victim. And finally, the essential condition is used to say that the offender needs to apologize for the offense he has caused, and the quote apology used by Harvey Weinstein and Louis C.K. fulfills this condition because those offenders refer to their wrongdoings explicitly. And so we say that, on the whole, only Louis C.K. apology satisfied the felicity condition of the speech act of apologizing. Others, however, do not meet those conditions at all. And now I would like to give you the structure of the apology of these offenders. So you can see that the quote apology is the only compulsory elements here. And for others apologies, there are quite a lot of elements, and I would like to talk a bit about the repeated elements in some apology. For example, Justin Hoffman repeats the apologizer character element to show that he is respectful towards women, helping him in steering the reader focus on himself rather than the actual offense in detail. The female victim he refuses to identify clearly and how he can redeem himself. Then we have Harvey Weinstein employs the apologizer commitment twice to emphasize the fact that he has been taking action to redeem himself. However, the action that he lists concern himself and some unrelated organization or people such as the National Rifle Association or the former President Donald Trump. So Harvey Weinstein here has purposefully avoided finding ways to redeem himself in an honest way with his victim, who is the one he should care about most in this situation. And based on the elements and the surface and the contents of these elements, most apologizers express their regret. However, Ben Affleck, Justin Hoffman, Chris Savino, and Harvey Weinstein chose not to clearly identify the details or characteristics of their offense. And so these apologies fail to meet the first goal of the Me Too movement, which is to demonstrate how prevalent sexual harassment is concerning, plainly indicating which actions are considered to be sexual misconduct. Harvey Weinstein and Louis C.K. provides justification for their sexual misconduct, which further downplays the aforementioned goals. Also, half of the apologizers do not mention the intention of redeeming themselves, while the other half do. Nonetheless, their plans to redeem themselves do not concern their victims at all. And so all apologies fail the second goal of the Me Too movement, which is to help survivors of sexual violence find ways to heal. And finally, a short account of the victim's suffering made by Louis C.K. is not enough to truly uncover the struggle faced by the survivors of sexual harassment, which is the third of the Me Too movement. And so all of the 6 chosen apologies largely fail to satisfy the goals of the Me Too movement.